Boogeyman band coming round the bend. Is Boogeyman band. Is Boogeyman band.
Greetings, fellow Fright Fiends, and thanks so much for dropping by the Horror Zone channel. I hope everyone's doing well. This is a Salem's Lot Theory video. This is something that originally we were going to, and by we I mean my buddies Sam and Danny. We go by the Salem's Lot Minority. I will put a link to Danny's channel down below. We got together a couple days ago just to talk about a theory regarding Marsten House, and I felt like it would actually fit really well into my Salem's Lot theory videos that I've been doing. You know, I did one about, Susan getting out of the Marsten house before the fire. I talked about, who drove Larry Crockett's body to the lake. I also did one about Ralphie Glick wearing pajamas when he was taken by Strager. He was in street clothes. So they've been a lot of fun. I've got a lot of really good feedback. And when Danny said, why don't you, take this one and put it on your channel, which I normally don't do. Most of the stuff we've done, the Salem's Lot Minority being Sam, Danny, and I, we do on Danny's channel. And Sam is the one that came up with this idea or this video subject. So give him complete credit for this. And it just happened to coincide with some of the stuff I was working on for my book right now. So it really was a lot of fun. And I took the reins and edited it and put it all together. And just to let you guys know, what we talk about in this video, you'll hear us talk about the 45th anniversary. Now, just to be clear, there is not a 45th anniversary event that is officially happening in Ferndale. That is not to say that I didn't try to have one put together. I did reach out to the Ferndale Chamber of Commerce. I talked to several people. I even drew up a proposal. Sam and Danny both did their parts in trying to reach out to surviving cast members and things like that. It just didn't come together. It just didn't gel. So we ended up scrapping it, unfortunately, which is a bummer because I thought it would be a lot of fun. But we are still going to go up there, and we are going to be in Ferndale beginning on October 10th. October 10th through the 15th. We will be getting there on the 10th and leaving on the 15th. So the 10th is a Thursday, the 15th is a Tuesday. So you have the weekend. There is the Scaregrounds that's going to be going on at the same time. That's at the fairgrounds. That sounds like a lot of fun. So there's going to be things going on in town, but we're just going to be, it's going to be kind of like a mini vacation for us. Just because my friend Danny lives in Georgia, my friend Sam and his wife Lauren live in Oregon, and I'm in California. So last year we all got together for the first time and visited the locales. We did a live stream on Danny's channel. It was a lot of fun, and I did quite a few videos here on this channel, talking about, the things that we did, like going up to 850 Bluff Street, which I had permission from the owner to do. But it was so much fun. I really look forward 2 months from now to seeing my buddies again. It's been a very stressful, long year, so it'll be really fun to do a get together with these guys again. I'm just gonna let this video play. It is a lot of fun. It is a little bit longer than most of these videos that I do on the theory side. It is 30 minutes long, and then I will come back for my closing thoughts, and here we go.
Hello, Salem's Lot fans. Welcome to the Salem's Not. Hey,
I like
there's
the Salem's Not.
Salem's Lot right there.
That's like the anti-Salem's Lot fan club. The Salem's Not.
Salem's Lot Minority, and I swear this is Coca-Cola, nothing else, folks. Anyway, welcome back, guys. So good to see you. I hope you enjoyed our last video, the 45th anniversary. Hope some of you fans out there that do like this channel still want to be able to try to attend this thing in Ferndale. Like I said, it's just going to be the three of us. I have a friend back in Chico, California that suggested parts of Fortuna, which is outside of Ferndale, along with places like Eureka. She says that some of the places are a little bit cheaper maybe, so if you guys are still looking to maybe try to book and meet us there in Ferndale, you can definitely try out the town of Fortuna. Keep that in mind. Also, we wanted to do something that was kind of fun. This is an idea I came up with at my job the other day when I work at a grocery store here in Portland. And it was, how did the Marsten House land in Ferndale, California for the filming? Recently, I've got some texts and some pictures from Ben here that kind of opened up my eyes to the idea. We're going to post them on here as we're talking. We're just going to insert the photos wherever they might be. And it just kind of prompted the question of how did they get that facade to arrive in town? And I've got a couple I got a couple ideas of how it might have happened. I think Danny's got a few things he would like to share with us as well. Then at the end of this video, we're going to have Ben, who's going to kind of give us some trivia and some actual facts as to how this house became and how it got set up in the town of Ferndale. So we thought this would be kind of fun to bounce off of. When I think of the 1979 Salem's Lot miniseries, while some people go to Barlow or they go to Ralphie Glick scratching at the window, these are trademarks that we often associate ourselves with that make this movie so iconic and so special for us to still talk about to this day. For me, I always come back to the Marsten House. To me, this was the star of the film. This was the centerpiece of the film to me. In a lot of ways, the Marsten House was a vampire in itself, in my eyes. It had its own set of eyes. It had its own expressions, even though it's a facade around the existing house that's on the property in Ferndale. The house was a vampire to me. I could stare at it like I would stare into vampire's eyes. I get seduced by it. I get intrigued by it. There's something that the architectural aspect and the design of the house itself has its own seductive manner. And I used to draw it on school books when I was a kid. I used to just literally take what I still have, the original 1979 TV guide clipping of. I used to stare at the house, and then underneath it is just kind of a little still photo of the shot of the characters, but it was Ralphie Glick at the window. So I really associated that picture with the house for most of my life. So I thought this would be a very fun video for all of us to kind of tap into and see how this massive piece of housing or architectural facade got into the town of Ferndale. If anybody has been to Ferndale, it's not a big town. It's a very quaint, small, quiet town. And to have semis and movie production crews come into this town, that had to really stop the town for how many days, close to a month, month and a half of filming, to have this monstrous piece come in. So in my mind, I thought that if this thing was coming to town, I think the only thing that kept swimming around in my head was the facade either had to be lifted through helicopter with cranes and cables to a certain extent to land on Bluff Street to get it up on that plateau. Yeah. And keep in mind that this is an existing house. This is not a big house, but it was on a plateau. And another thing I thought of too is that they have a pretty good sized fairgrounds in the town of Ferndale, that I wonder if it landed there at the fairgrounds and they had to take several pieces into semis or to moving trucks to go down the streets of Maine and Ocean or whatever to get over to Bluff Street, to drive up to Bluff Street on that plateau to drop off certain parts of the house, and then maybe they assembled it all together up on that plateau. But those are just thoughts of how did this thing get up to that street? That is not a big driveway. That is not a real big wide road to go up. So those are just kind of little thoughts in my head of how this thing came to be and how it got assembled through that narrow road and how it became such a massive part. And apparently before everything else grew around there, which are now trees and brushes, more houses, that thing wasn't an eyesore, but it was big enough that from Victorian Street, or at least the restaurant, at least the places you can see over on Ocean and over on Main, you could see that house from a mile away. Especially when the sun hit on the west side. That thing was like literally what he says in the movie. It was like a beacon of light. You couldn't miss it. And all the neighbors that lived in the area would literally stop on the side of the road and wonder what was going on. To the point where somebody apparently ran into a telephone pole looking from the back of their rearview mirror trying to figure that thing out. But those are just guesses. Like maybe it was thrown in by helicopter, you know, the pieces, or like I said, maybe it was dropped off at the Ferndale Fairgrounds where there was open space to land that thing, or at least the majority of it, and then they drove certain pieces up to be able to try to assemble it on Bluff Street and get it up to that hill.
It was definitely a landmark that just appeared for a lot of the people in Ferndale. You know, and I have a friend who has an Airbnb, Eunice, and she's a walking history book of Ferndale. And I'm telling you, I need to put her Airbnb in the link to this video, because if you want to know about Ferndale and filming, she knows the deal. And she talked about how everybody just wanted to walk up there and get their picture and walk around, so it was a pretty big event for the people there in Ferndale.
Yeah, absolutely.
So for me, I mean, I'm as people most likely know now, I'm writing this book about just the impact of this film on my life, and you guys play a big part in it because last year, we did go up there to Bluff, 850 Bluff, and thanks in part to the owner and just her being cordial enough to let us come up there and walk around. And I had done that the year prior, same thing. I did contact somebody before we went up there. I don't just trespass onto people's property, and luckily I had contact within the town to get this person's information and reach out and just be like, hey, this is going to be respectful. I'm just going up there to see this. Even though the facade is gone, Marsten House is long gone, that hill is still iconic and that area is still iconic. So they did film my favorite movie up there, and there was several vehicles like, Cully's truck and Straker's Cadillac that were up there. So I'm like, God, just to walk up there and see those areas, that was enough for me. And when I walked up there the first time, I just remember it was, I think I saw that on your guys' faces last year, the same experience I had, and I was experiencing it for the second time, but I was sort of living vicariously through your experiences, because I'm like walking up there the first time is surreal. You do get shaky because if you love this film like we do, you studied it growing up. I studied it. I knew it, I knew every cut. I knew every, area that they filmed in. Once I got into Ferndale for the first time, was able to just absorb the town and find these spots. I knew exactly where they were at. I knew exactly the shots that were lined up. And it was one of those things that, it just meant it's the great white whale, and that's how I'm going to put it. I think it was just, it's the great white whale of getting up there and being able to walk around where the people that contributed to this film that has impacted our lives for the last 45 years, that's what meant the most to me. And thinking about how did they get that road to look like, how did they get that hill to look like that? Because it does, they had that barrier wall up there. It was a stone barrier wall,
right?
And if you guys want, I do have some periodicals that have some information about it, and there's some of it that pretty much what it was, and this is some of the stuff that I found out about it when we decided we were going to do this. So the whole thing is how they decided to use Ferndale was that there was a Warner Brothers telefilm that was done in 1977 called A Death in Canaan. And that was like the first film that was really shot in that area. And what happened was the assistant for that film, her name was Ann Cottle. She became an associate producer on Salem's Lot. So she just said, hey, I know this town that doubled for Connecticut for this other film. Why don't we go and, do a location scout there? So that's what Toby Hooper was signed, and then he had to go and pretty much go out there. And they loved the look of the town. They felt like, it could double for, Maine. The problem was they didn't have a house that looked like Marsten House, but they found the cottage that's on Bluff Street, and they said, it's overlooking the town, it's overlooking the valley, and they decided to build it there. And it was Mort Rabinowitz, who actually was the production designer, who was tasked to build it.
Right.
So I have that information that they built it there, and then if you go on, the whole thing was they paid the family that was living there $20,000 to move out during production when they built it. And their last name, it was Mr. and Mrs. Robert Meiter, Meitner, and they were guaranteed all of the lumber once they were done shooting it. So all the lumber that they tore down, that's what they were guaranteed, was that $20,000.
Was it disclosed that they still lived in Ferndale, or do you think that they headed literally out of town until production was wrapped up and they were contacted at the end to move back?
They said that I did remember seeing something where Hooper, I think, said he never saw the people that lived there. So I guess once it was, confirmed that they were going to do it, They paid the money. They weren't seen until after production wrapped. Now, production started, and I kept thinking it started in Fortuna for the scene where Susan and Ben meet, but they said that it started on July 10th in Ferndale.
Right.
So I don't know if they count that area, but that's where it started. Now, when I read this, there was this, I'll show this periodical. So this is a Delirium, let's see, what number is this? It's the 30th issue, and it has 3 interviews in it. One of them is with the late Lance Kerwin, and he talks about that they built Marsten House in Burbank and somehow shipped it up there. I don't know how that happened. Because from my understanding was, and I have a picture of them constructing Marsten House from the Ferndale Enterprise archives, and it shows the house, and it's not completed, and you can see they're constructing the rock wall. They got trucks and tractors and everything there. But let me find that spot where Lance talks about that. The exterior of the Marsten House was assembled and built there on the Warner Brothers back lot, and then they took it apart and shipped it up to where we were filming in Ferndale. They perched it up on this hill and put it up in one night. And then our first night of shooting, we were filming the Marsten House. It was getting light, and the fog was lifting, and it looked old. It looked legit. In fact, the house looked so legit, and the story that you guys brought up, car came driving up. I think it was about 5:30 in the morning, and this guy got out looking hungover, like maybe he was out gambling all night and was trying to get home before sunrise, and he came around the corner, saw this house, and stopped. He got out of the car, stood there for 15 minutes just staring at it. He looked back down the road where he was coming from, looked up the road, shaking and scratching his head. We went up to the guy, and he said, "I've lived in this town for 25 years. I do not ever remember seeing that house. That is one scary house." But like everyone there was validated for doing a good job with it. So that story I've heard differently, because I heard David Soul said in that little anniversary he did, I think it was for the 42nd anniversary of it, and he said that someone hit a telephone pole, and they ran down the hill to see if he was okay, and he got out and said, same thing, I've been here for so that story has changed in so many ways. But obviously there was going to be people that, that house is tiny, that's really there. It's a small house. You see that big Gothic foreboding mansion, that would sort of I think that would throw you off if it's because you imagine Ferndale's small now. Imagine what it was like in 1979. So I mean, complete night and day. But that was interesting to read, because when I read that interview, I was like, I had never heard that they shipped it up there. I kept thinking, okay, they just brought all the material up there to build it, right, and built around it.
I got a little bit of information too. The family that was living there, you were talking about.
Yeah, the Majors.
They, there was very little income in their family. They didn't have the money to fix the place up. They had 5 kids.
Oh wow!
And as a matter of fact, the kids were students in the class of my friend in Ferndale, who I've stayed with her several times in her Airbnb.
Oh, Airbnb. Oh, nice.
Yeah. So she knew the family firsthand, and of course, when they came in and they put the facade of the Marsten House around it, everybody was admiring it, and she said that everybody was wishing they would leave it. And
God, yes.
But anyways, those were her thoughts about seeing the house up there. So.
Well, because I have a friend that lived in town. His name was Brian Farmer. He actually worked for the company I work for, and he grew up there. And he said that they would go up and look at it, and just see it, up there. And I'm like going, God, I wish I could just a time machine just to go back and see it.
That was in my mind when I was in my 20s. I was actually with a really good friend at the time that we were dating, and her aunt was getting married over in Fortuna, and somebody told me that, hey, the town of Ferndale, that's where the exterior shots were shot for your favorite movie, Salem's Lot. And I think I grabbed her keys and went right out the door to go find it.
That's awesome.
In my mind, I thought that literally the Marsten House was still existing in its glory in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
And when I finally got in touch with people in town, they went, yeah, it's on Bluff Street. They gave me an address. And it's like my stomach dropped when I did drive up there and realize
see the small house.
I didn't have the magazines that we all know and love and treasure now. I literally had to physically drive up there to see if that thing really did exist. So it was,
because this was the image. That image is what I saw.
Yeah.
And that's how I knew the house wasn't real, because I kept thinking, oh, the town's real. You know, the Straker and Barlow, that's real, so the house has to be real. And when I saw that and I see this little house on the side of this little structure, I'm like going, oh, really? It's not real?
Now, I will say this, and this is funny because, you know, people that have watched this before know that I'm on the opposite side of the country than you guys.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm in Georgia, about an hour north of Atlanta. Now, Ferndale, this tiny town in Northern California on the opposite side of the country. I work in a middle school an hour north of Atlanta over here, and there's a guy on my staff. I mentioned Ferndale, or he sees Ferndale on my Facebook page a couple years ago. My dad was the mayor there.
Oh,
and
wow.
I said, you got to be kidding me. Your dad was not the mayor of Ferndale, California. He said, my dad was the mayor. And then my friend in the Airbnb out there is like, oh, yeah, I know so-and-so. And she started telling me all about the guys that I work with, his family history. And so he's got pictures somewhere of that house.
That's
his family goes up there and makes pictures. I'm like, dude, you've got to find these pictures.
Yes. Yeah.
The world needs to see them.
There's none outside of that one that I just showed, and the one that was in the Ferndale Enterprise.
Yeah,
those are the only two I've seen that are in the construction or showing the fact that it's not a real house.
Yeah,
because I don't think I wonder if they didn't even finish that side, because there is a flub in the film that when she runs down into the cellar, you can see where it ends, and it's it's that. And I'm like going, oh, that's weird. Oh, it's like, I don't care though. It's like, it's one of those things where I know you can find flubs and everything. I don't care. It's like, it just it gives a character. It gives a character.
I will always treasure all of us last year going up there, not once, but twice. One during the day that we did with Karen, with her on the property, and then doing the night walk. It was like being back in high school, because we just
that's what it felt
like. Moment where it was almost surreal that for years you wonder what it would like to be there, and when you're there, it's like an out-of-body experience, especially with your best friends and wife. It's just, what a fantastic moment. I was just playing it earlier this morning on YouTube, and I even watched the very first video of the three of us coming together as a trio to do Minority. And I remember feeling like that kid elbowing my way in so I can join the club, because I remember you two doing the Salem's Lot mini. I think it was a mini-series review. It was just the two of you. It was you and Dan.
Yeah, the first one we did was just sort of talking about, Danny had kind of laid it out for me, like, oh, here's like, how did you become a fan of the film? Just like, how did you become a horror fan? And, Salem's Lot. It was kind of more of just like a Q&A, because we just knew each other through text, like Facebook Messenger and stuff like that. That was the first time we actually talked.
And I remember watching that going, ooh, 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 ooh.
Yeah.
I have to join. I don't care if there's not an empty chair. I've got to join.
Well, now, Sam, what do you have on how the house got there? Do you have any new research or information? I really
thought, because, obviously it's in pieces. There's no way that front facade is in one piece, because it's so large. So I was thinking that it may have been divided into thirds.
That's what I would think too.
2 windows here. Then you had the middle partition, which is where the porch and the front door steps would lead up to, along with the porch light. And then the other half. So I'm convinced that thing was in thirds. And if it wasn't flown in, obviously we're going to insert the shot that you sent over, Ben, of that big moving truck, or that big diesel truck that's in the driveway by Bluff Street.
Yeah.
I'm thinking that those 3 partitions were inside one of those trucks up to the house, and they unloaded, either pushed by another
crane or something,
a crane, to be able to establish a placement of the first partition, the second partition, and then the third one, to group it as a house, and then whatever final touches of either paint or look of decor to make it look as old as it looked in the film that you really can't see unless you were literally up to the house of where those partitions were placed and pushed together. That made it into a real house. So that's kind of like the more that we're getting into this video and we're sharing our thoughts, I keep thinking that it had to take how many moving semis to be able to secure, if not one, those partitions inside the truck, and each one was unloaded off of a crane or did something, or kind of like what you said, lifted and placed on that plateau in front of that house. Lining it just right. I'm sure walkie-talkies or even like an actual megaphone of to the left, to the right, pivot here. And I'm sure
I just don't know how they would have brought it up there on trucks. That just seems like a lot of work to bring it up there on a truck, as opposed to just like you said, they have a fairgrounds there. They have areas there that they could have built it and then drove it down the road. But driving it up from Los Angeles to Ferndale, that's like 10 hours. That's a long trek. And then the way that it says here is that it took them 20 days to complete it. So I'm like going, it took them 20 days to build it.
Set up the house.
It says that it could cost them $100,000 to do it. To construct the 3-story. It was a 3-story building, and they said it took them 20 days to complete it. So I don't know if that's from construction to setup. That's what I would assume that is.
Yeah,
that's the only thing I can think of. But I keep thinking they built. The way that I look at it, and sometimes, like I said, the story about the guy that saw it from the road, that's got embellishments.
Yeah, that's kind of alternative.
Could there have been like something that Lance saw when he was at Burbank Studios that maybe was like,
that was instilled.
Something for like maybe the interior, so if the doors were open it would look like the front of the I don't, it's like, because they sometimes will do that, like the Psycho House is like that, because the Psycho House is a real set, but the interiors are a stage, so it's like you go,
or possibly there were just sheets of plywood, and then whatever was like maybe kind of an outline for where the windows would go. I'm sure the house set up within a couple days, but to really go back in and get those details of the windows and the shape, the shading, and the eave that goes into where the porch is, that probably was added on literally on the spot. Hence,
I was going to say they had to put those little, because they did create several dead trees. They had that stone retaining wall, so that they had to have put there. I mean, they couldn't have created that and then just slid it into place like a Lego set. They had to actually construct it, I would assume, on that hillside.
Yeah.
So and because there is kind of a retaining wall there, it's just not to the length of the one that's in the movie.
What are your thoughts, Danny?
I agree with you guys. If we're hearing that it just came up overnight, well, then it had to have been pre-constructed in pieces of some sort.
True.
But what gets me is the wall itself next to the driveway. That's a feat within itself.
Yeah, right.
I don't know.
Are you talking about where it goes up the driveway? Because on the other side, you can just see this huge 2x4 just angled, right where the basement is. So on the side, as you're going up the driveway, there is a wall. Like there's a side wall that's holding that side up.
Exactly. Yeah. That may be something that we could ask around, when we get to Ferndale. Like, hey, what do you remember about this?
Right.
I don't know. It's like, it's funny, like when I went into the town the first few times I was there, no one knew about Salem's Lot. No one remembered it. No one talked about it. They talked about the Majestic. They talked about Outbreak. They never talked about the Death in Canaan. They never talk about. So it's like, Salem's Lot was kind of like, that's why it was so fun to see the 40th anniversary event, because there was people that dressed up in goth, that had vampire makeup on and stuff like that, and had Ron there, and people I think appreciated it. Even if they laughed in spots where I wouldn't have laughed at, but again, it's a different crowd. But there was moments in it where I saw them go, oh, like they would see certain streets or certain locales and go, oh, that's where that is. And that was kind of cool to experience. But when I do videos on my YouTube channel, and the people that come, and they're so kind, and even if, and I always say, I might, like, right now we're talking about this. We don't know how this was done. We can theorize and say, oh yeah, well, we think it was done this way, or maybe it was done this way. you know, somebody will do that on a theory that I had about, you know, how did Susan get out of the Marsten house? Why didn't Ben find her when he was in there? You know, where was she? How did she? And so I had a theory, and other people were like, yeah, well, maybe, what if this happened? Or what if that happened? So there are people that will kind of say, have their own theories instead of saying, you're wrong. And I'm like, going, I'm not saying I'm right. I'm saying we don't know. And it could have been something where they were like, we'll just do this so we can pay it off at the end, not really thinking about it. Because at the time they didn't know people were going to deconstruct this movie. You know,
Right.
it was a CBS sweeps week movie. That's what it was. It was it was a well-known or up-and-coming author in Stephen King. It was his second book, and the only movie that had happened before this one was Carrie. So that's, you know, they were looking, let's see what the next movie will do, you know, in a miniseries, you know, kind of thing. So.
Yeah,
Again, I think we're keeping. I think people like us are what's keeping this movie alive.
Right.
absolutely. There's just so much to celebrate about it, because not only is it the movie that's the centerpiece, but it's a place where I'm so thankful, Danny, even though you weren't feeling too well last year, but
Poor guy.
to have you finally be on our neck of the woods and to be in the town of Ferndale. I think it was so cool that we all get a chance to not only experience the movie, but we're experiencing a place that I don't think happens these days. And what I'm trying to get to is that there is a certain sense of community in Ferndale. There is a hospitality and a mannerism about the town, aside from the movie, that is very centering, especially if you have a job that you don't particularly like going to, or you're surrounded by traffic that's very negative and uptight, very combustible. There's just tension in our normal lives as we lead separate lives. But when you come to Ferndale, and this is extended out to fans or people who do want to show up for the 45th this year in October, there's just a certain centeredness. There's a certain level of completeness that you feel. And for me, every time I leave, like the old song, I left my heart in San Francisco, or I left my heart in blah, blah, blah.
Wherever.
You really do feel some heartache when you pack your car, because you finally put it down and you finally understand a little bit more about yourself. You get more of a sense of mannerisms and humanity. Yeah, I'm definitely out there with this, but that's what I take out of it. And to have you guys be there, it's just the cherry on top. I mean, it really is. So when you get back in the car, you're almost kind of choked up, because you have bonded, you have gotten something out of it. You're recentered to come back and face what you have to do. And that's for us, going back there to recenter, coming back for the holidays and rushing through what we have to do. But there is a certain element that I feel that I take with me every visit. And I hope whoever's going to make it there this year, fan-wise, whoever watches our channel, it hopefully experiences something similar to that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I couldn't have said it better.
Well, guys, this has definitely been fun. And once again, we're extending the invitation through, I want to say October 10th through whatever date it is. I've lost the dates already. We will definitely post it on the screen here. We will definitely do a little text on the bottom of the screen for fans and anybody who want to visit Ferndale. We have been keeping an eye on some of the comments on the channel. So, yeah, if you want to go ahead and still consider, hopefully there's still places open in Fortuna, possibly Eureka. It's going to be pretty much 2 months from now, and time's ticking, man. I think within the next few days, it's going to feel like October already. So it's going to go by quick. Hopefully people are coming into town. There should be some openings, because it isn't the summertime. We know that the summertime, it's very hard to book.
Yeah.
But yeah, if anybody has any questions, or if you guys want to leave comments in the comments, certainly let us know. We'll try to be in contact with people who have any questions about where to stay or where to go or how to meet up with us in town in Ferndale. Again, it's a very small town. It's very easy to accommodate and find people in this area. So we would love to all see you there. And I hope everyone has a good week, and we will talk to you folks soon.
So that's going to be it. I hope everyone enjoyed that. It was a lot of fun getting together with my buddies again, just talking about the theory of Marsten House and how it got up on that hill and how they constructed it, and if they constructed it on site, if they built it and shipped it up there. A lot of different stories, a lot of different theories. I'm curious what other people think about it. I hope everyone enjoyed the footage. I tried to put footage in from our trip there last year so you guys can see. If you hadn't seen the video that I did last summer, you could see what the site looks like today. So I want to thank everyone for taking time to watch this video. Let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. Again, leave me your feedback. Also, there is a link down below to the reference that Danny gives for the Airbnb for Eunice, the woman that runs the Airbnb. I put a link down below to that as well. Hope everyone enjoyed it, and I will talk to you guys again real soon. Take it easy, stay scared as always, and remember, you can do nothing against the master. Hey, my fellow Fright Fiends, I just want to thank everyone for supporting Boogeyman Ben's Horror Zone. If you haven't yet subscribed and you'd like to, please hit the subscribe button down below. Click the bell notification so you're updated every time I drop a new video. I try to drop a video at least once or twice a week. The Horror Zone is a passion of mine, and it really makes me happy that I can share that passion with all of you guys. Thanks so much again for the support, and I'll talk to you again real soon. Take it easy. Stay scared as always. Peace.